Hey everyone, welcome to the Chasing Giants podcast. I just want to warn you, I'm in town hunting and we were trying to video really late in the week so that we could give you the best information on what's going on with the rut. But unfortunately, we had to do it in Don's room in here with just a standard video camera, and the audio is a little bad. So sorry, thank you guys for being patient with us. When you turn your volume up real high, it gets kind of crackly and distorted. So I apologize again. It's just because we were trying to do it in person without our normal equipment. I hope you guys are patient with us, and we'll be back to normal next week. But hope you enjoy it. Don goes on a really big rant in this one. You're not going to want to miss it.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by ASIO Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 247, brought to you by ASIO Gear. And Don, it's the peak of the rut. We got a lot of things to talk about today, and some of them are going to surprise you a little bit. A lot of things are happening right now. A lot of things are panning out not like what we expected. And the big question is, after last week's podcast and we put up Weather Underground and looked at the average temps for the rest of the month, we thought this was going to be one of the best ruts ever. So I want to start the show off just turning it over to you. What's happened since last week? What are your observations? You can summarize some of the rut reports we've been doing on Chasing Giants TV. But let's start with the first thing and what's going on with this rut?
Well, the weather is warmer than what they had predicted a week ago. So we always say weather trumps everything, and absolutely here's a perfect example of it. If you would have looked at the forecast for this week a week ago, it looked absolutely fantastic, but those high temperatures just kept creeping up, as well as the lows at night kept creeping up, and it suppressed activity. Most of the activity that we're seeing is the first hour and last hour of daylight, which is typical, most of the time. Usually the rut drags that into midday more. We had one day with good midday action on our cameras and such, and I believe that was Wednesday the 6th, November 6th. But since then, it's been that first hour and last hour. I think yesterday, the last photo of a deer I had on the morning cameras was 9:30, and then the first evening picture was 3:30. So from 9:30 to 3:30, there was not a single deer on its feet in front of our cameras. And those two activities were both 1.5-year-old bucks. So if you start looking at mature bucks, it's right there around daylight and sunset. And now we're getting to the point where those bucks are getting locked down with does. So in my opinion, the very toughest time to kill a mature buck on purpose, I'm talking about one buck.
Hunting a specific buck.
We're in it right now. We're the middle 2 weeks of November are the toughest time to target one specific buck and get him killed.
Yeah. Well, for the record, before we go any further, we're actually recording this on Friday, November 8th. So when we say yesterday or tomorrow or what have you, today is Friday. We've been having to record recently on Thursdays for some reason, but I'm in town this week. We've been hunting hard. For the most part, I've been hunting hard.
Way harder than I have.
But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I never thought I would have seen the day where Don sets out November 7th hunt, but we're going to dive into that a little bit. But last week, when we put Weather Underground up on the screen, you're right. The forecasted low and the forecasted high were a whole lot more separated. I think we had a day in here where it was only 8 degrees difference between the high and the low. Mm-hmm. We've seen the impact on cameras. Now, don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of good bucks killed. Mm-hmm. But I think go into a little bit of explanations of right now in these conditions, it's all about where you're at. Somebody 600 yards away from you might be a completely different experience.
Yeah, there was one night where the low was 63 degrees. and that's a low. So you can't expect too much movement under those conditions, and there was very little that night, actually. Weather trumps everything. We just got to beat that home. The rut's crazy because, you can be in the right spot and you swear it's on fire, and you could be a few hundred yards away, like you said, Terry, and you swear the rut's not even happening. And I see this on social media a lot, where somebody will proclaim the rut is on because I seen a buck chasing a doe, and here it is in October or whatever. You can't base things off of one person's observations, and that's why, here we're using our cell cameras that are on numerous properties. Some of them over scrapes, over funnel areas, just different things. And we're also taking in, the observations of the whole Chasing Giants team as well. So, what we're reporting is not just what I seen or just what you see. We're taking a lot of different factors into consideration. And you can be in the right spot or you can be in the wrong spot. But the thing of it is, they say during the rut, you just hunt as many hours as you can, and it makes sense as long as you hunt smart. You gotta play the wind. You gotta have good access to your stands. You can't be burning your stands out. But if you got sound hunting practices, then absolutely, the more time you can spend in the woods, the better. There's going to be more bucks killed this time of the year than any other time, but most of that is not by design. That's just, pure accident. It's the law of averages catching up. You spend enough time in the woods, and the deer are on their feet and active more, you're bound to have some come by and get shot. But I've got to the point where I absolutely despise the rut. For numerous reasons. Not only is it real tough to pattern an individual buck, but a lot of those younger bucks are going crazy and they're covering a lot of territory and they're getting killed.
Well, and that leads itself to the way you're hunting. You're targeting growing a history to harvest a mature whitetail that you've documented that storyline on. For guys that have 1 week of rutcation, it makes sense that this is when they take their, especially if they're going out of state where they haven't done scouting. So a lot of that is just what you've developed into how your style, your goals as a deer hunter being a little bit different. We got several buddies. Patrick Simpson was in Iowa this week, just came back through Illinois. He shot a buck. Brandon Epperson is out of state. Josh Anderson's out of state. Those guys have picked their vacation where they can set in those funnels, and they're putting in the hours, just like I know a lot of our listeners are, that says this is when I'm going all in and packing my little Debbies in my bag and sitting there all day. But yeah, you're right. For us in our scenario right now, it's really tough. We're gonna close out today's show, just so I make sure everybody understands. We're gonna close out today's show by looking the last segment at looking at what the 10-day forecast is. So we'll end the show on there. Before we do the ASIO spot, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the biggest win of the week, and that was the Trumpster getting reelected as our president, and not just getting reelected. We watched it early and we were a little concerned, but he pretty much dominated this thing. America spoke.
Yeah, we actually got a question. A listener submitted question about this, and we'll get into it a little deeper. But yeah, that was a highlight of the week. There's no doubt about it. I'd take a Trump victory over a Boone and Crockett buck anytime because it's just so much more important in what we have going on in this country.
Well, we're going to take a quick break from our friends from ASIO, and we're going to come back, and Don and I are going to turn a conversation a little bit different this week, and we're going to talk about some different feelings or different emotions that we've had during this year's hunting season, and also talk about, Don led he mentioned this last night in the Rut Report on Thursday, November 7th, the Rut Report, and that was homecoming bucks, and we have seen that unfold here at this farm this week, actually, is even today. So we'll be right back, and you won't want to miss this next segment.
ASIO Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. ASIO Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatorial creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit ASIOgear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. ASIO Gear. Prepare to be invisible.
So Don, you've mentioned this homecoming buck theory a gazillion times on this podcast, and it was from observations from different scenarios. You wrote the article about it, probably one of your most known articles inside of was it North American Whitetail, I believe is where that one was. It got a lot of attention, and people keep talking about it. I think that discussion has led a lot of people to start looking at annual data a whole lot more. But let's talk specifically about a buck that I'm hunting here on the farm, and we're not going to get too specific on it, but this buck is traveling a lot of territory. Unpack what we've seen year after year with him. I mean, you even said today you're going back and looking at some pictures, but even we talk about it, and then here we have it unfold right in front of us in the last 12 hours.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that the listener doesn't confuse homecoming bucks with same time, same place. Mm-hmm. Two different scenarios there that I've wrote about and witnessed over the years. So same time, same place is those annual patterns. So if a buck is someplace, say the first week of October, next year the first week of October, he's very likely to be in that same location. Now maybe not right in front of that camera, but that close proximity anyway. And but the homecoming bucks, and I wrote that same time, same place article back in 2003, so it's been 22 years ago, almost 21 going on 22 years ago. And at that time, that was the first I'd ever heard anybody talk about it, and I think today it's pretty well accepted, these annual patterns. A lot of people talk about it, but what they miss is the homecoming bucks, which I did an article on that too, and that's a situation where a buck has a specific summer range and a totally different fall range. And so when he shifts to his fall range, as the rut starts to heat up and he can't find a hot doe there in his fall range, he runs back to that summer range. And I know the only thing that makes sense is he can't find a hot doe there, so he's coming back to look. And this is the one thing that I've noticed that you can mark on the calendar. Those homecoming bucks, when they come back to that summer range, it's going to happen 24 hours either side of November 7th. So 6th, 7th, or 8th. And when they come back, a lot of times they don't stay very long. Sometimes they just come at night and they're gone before sunrise. But I've documented that on trail cameras with specific bucks numerous times. And we've got a buck on this farm that disappeared way back in, I think it was about the time he shed velvet. I mean, it's been a while, maybe the 1st of October. And he disappeared. No photos, no sightings or anything, and wasn't sure what happened to him. But then I forget what evening it was. I think it was the 6th, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. November 6th. I recorded the rut report. And then I went to town to eat and was driving back. It was dark. It was after the hunt that evening. And I'm just probably not even a mile from home, 3/4 of a mile from home. And I can see in my headlights this deer is getting ready to run across the road in front of me. So, of course, I sped up a little bit. I wanted to get a look at what deer it was, because then I could see it was a buck. Well, that buck locked up right there at the edge of the road before jumping onto the road. And I stopped my truck too, and he was only like 50 yards in front of me, and I had binoculars right there on the console, and I grabbed him, and I'm looking at this deer through my windshield through the binoculars, and I wasn't sure what buck it was at first, and I'm thinking, man, this is a pretty nice deer. Maybe this is one I'm interested in shooting, but he just kept focused right on me. He didn't turn his head whatsoever. He was locked on me. And finally, after a couple minutes, he turned his head, and he started to spin and go back the direction he'd come. And I seen it was the buck that had been missing. And he did not show up on the cameras on the farm yet. Now he might have some of the ones that are non-cell, but he's not showed up on a cell camera yet. And then today I'm coming home. I'd been out checking some trail cameras on the side by side, and I was coming home at 10:20, and this very same buck is coming across wide open country, and at the very same spot where I'd seen him a couple nights before. And we're talking in the middle of the day this time. But the interesting thing is the direction he was coming from. There's no cover for a mile. He's coming across wide open ag country.
No reason he would be there otherwise. It wasn't a rut funnel. It wasn't he was going to a destination for a reason.
And he wasn't chasing a doe. He was all alone. So coming back home, I got plenty of pictures of that buck in velvet this summer. But he disappeared, and now apparently he's back. So
the whole reason, I'm here versus hunting other farms is we identified this as a buck that, he wanted shot, and I was going to go after it. Even though he had not been here, historically he'd been here during the rut. Mm-hmm. So I've been camped out hunting downwind side of bedding in the mornings and then food in the evenings. We haven't had great winds to be in some of your better spots, but waiting for this deer, and then all of a sudden I'm at Royal King getting some stuff while he's going through a drive-through coming home, and he calls, he said, I just saw the buck. So we hadn't seen him for all fall, and then it's not trail camera data, it's actually you saw him out of the truck. So
it's almost like it's a God thing, because I've seen him twice in the last 3 days crossing the road at the same spot. And I'm talking, this spot's in the middle of nowhere. This is not like in the woods.
Not on your farm, but very close to the farm.
Not even on the farm. He's headed my direction.
Right.
But, for me to see that buck twice in 3 days, crossing the road at the same location, and it being wide open country, it's kind of crazy.
We only need to see him one more time, and that's within bow range. We'll see what happens. So
I hope it happens.
Let's shift gears a little bit, and I think some people are going to be surprised with this topic, and we talked about it when we went to lunch today. I think both of us are dealing with some weird emotions this hunting season, and for you to not hunt on November 7th says something. I'm not sure what it says, but as I sit back, and I'm hunting harder this year than I've hunted in the last probably 7 or 8 years because I have the time. I look at you, and it's a completely different demeanor. It's not that you're mad or upset or depressed. It's just different. Walk us through what it's like. You've made you've been very open about not having a second target buck, still watching for one. But this is also the year you didn't have a second target buck. It was also the earliest you've ever tagged out in very early October versus later in October. Walk us through what you're kind of is in your head right now. It's the middle of the rut, and you're sitting here without a target buck.
Well, it makes it really hard to get out of bed early in the morning when you don't have a buck that you feel that you want to shoot. There's plenty of nice bucks out there that I could shoot, but my goal is to shoot giants. And you look around this room, I don't have a lot more room to hang too many deer heads, so I'm trying to, if I can just kill one giant a year, that's great. And it just so happened that this year I did it really early on the 4th hunt of the year, and I need to shoot a bunch of does, and I'm working on that. But I'm doing it in such a way that I'm not disturbing the farm. So a lot of the good stands where I could go and probably shoot a deer every time I sit there, I don't want to shoot does there, so I'm staying away from those. I'm kind of hunting these out of the way spots where I don't see near as many deer as I could. And I get up every morning, the first thing I do is I reach over and I grab my cell phone, I look at the cell cameras to see if there's a target buck showed up anywhere. I've got cameras on 2 different pieces of public land. And totally different counties even. And last year I had a up-and-comer buck that I thought should be a shooter on public land on both them spots, and I had the cameras in the exact same locations, and those bucks have not showed up, so I don't know if they got killed or what. A couple other bucks that I think are just 1 year away that I could probably go shoot them and kill a nice buck. And today I was just on social media and I seen someone in the hunting industry that shot a decent buck. It's not a giant. And I'm thinking to myself, it kind of reminded me that everybody has got different goals. They got different situations. And there's these guys out there that are, just hammering bucks, between say 140 and 170 inches and doing multiple bucks like that every season in multiple states. And that's just not me. I guess I'm pretty unique because I just don't see a whole lot of other people out there like me, that if I could just shoot one buck and he's the biggest buck I can find, that's what I'm after. But even at that, I've got a location of another giant that I don't think is as old as the Zacchaeus buck I shot, but I think he's as big and maybe even an inch or two bigger. And I could go shoot another 190-inch deer. I'm pretty confident, but he's just a year away from being really special, I think. So why would I want to do that? And so it's just really hard to get motivated when you can't find the kind of buck that you want to shoot. And it's not that I'm looking for a 200. If I could find a 170 on public, that would just be crazy, incentive for me to get out of bed in the morning. But I can't find that buck either. I've got some bucks on permission properties that are really, really nice, but they're just not quite there as far as age, or they're not quite there in terms of antler score. And now I want the combination. I don't want just an old buck. There's guys that talk about hunting age, and then there's guys that just hunt antler score. Well, I kind of combine the two and I mesh them, and I want an older buck with giant antlers.
But that's just where animal. That's just where you're at in your journey with what your goals are. And there's nothing wrong with any strategy in there, but it goes back to that simple fact of, this is the first time that I know of since we've been friends that you've had a great year, because it's not a pity party by any means. That's not what you've been very blessed by being able to kill a 190 plus buck, a target buck. It's just, what do I do now? What do I do now? And doe patrol, when we know the rut, so there's a couple factors. We know the rut activity is slow. Mm-hmm. So even if it was screaming in the woods and cold temperatures, where if nothing else you were videoing, it would still be a lot more motivation than what it is. And number two, there's just not that buck that's out there that's kind of got you fired up and excited. And it's a weird emotion to see you go through when I get the text message, I'm hunting one area and he's hunting another. I didn't go this morning, and it was November 7th, and I thought, oh my goodness. Now I think you did had some sleep schedule got flipped because of having an upset stomach one night, so sleeping in might have helped you a little bit. But yeah, not if you would have had a giant that you were chasing, you would have fought through that, no doubt.
Oh, no doubt about it. I'm sitting here. Every passing year, I hate the rut more and more. I just hate it, because I would love to be out doing some habitat work right now, and I don't want to go in and do habitat work and be bumping deer off the farm, so I can't go do habitat work. I don't have a target buck to shoot. I need to do doe patrol, but I don't want to put a bunch of pressure on the farm right ahead of gun season. I want them deer to be coming to me, not being pushed off of me. So I'm kind of sitting here in a lull, wanting to do something, but it's just not the right time for anything, and not having a target buck.
So I don't know if any of our listeners, you guys can comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, if you've ever killed your target buck, like in a one buck state like Kentucky. Killing a deer opening weekend like Brandon Epperson did. It's, unless you're going out of state, it's like, what do I do now? Have you guys ever kind of experienced that? I think even though Illinois can kill too, not having something that meets that goal and going after. And then we got the other side of the equation that maybe some of you guys have already had, where you had your hopes set on a specific buck, and a neighbor shot it. Chris Yates had that happen. Patrick Simpson had that happen. That you get your whole hopes up for one specific buck and build that story, and then he's gone without a chance to hunt him. I know you've also been in that situation too. So My situation's a little different. We've had a property for many years and have toyed with getting rid of it. I don't know how many times, and finally we put the story together for 3 years on a giant that was there this year, and then he dies of EHD. So the weird emotions that this sport can give you, the highs and not necessarily the lows. We're all still very blessed to do this, but I think it's very interesting in our position, whether you want to say we're in the outdoor industry or not. We're not accepting, though, these emotions along with pressure to produce to make us go out and do something just for the sake of video cameras. That's the other piece of this puzzle that I wanted to kind of turn this to and let you talk about a little bit, because there's a lot of guys out there in the industry that they're in a situation like you or like me. We've talked about how many deer I've passed in just the last week waiting for one specific buck. Hunting here is very similar to fishing a slot limit. There's certain bucks that are in the management program that get shot. There might be deer bigger and there might be deer smaller that just can't be shot. There's very specific ones. And both of us make money in this industry, but I think that we've both committed to hold each other accountable, that pressure from the outside is not going to sway our decision of you going, and you could go kill that deer tomorrow you referenced earlier and claim he was a 6-year-old and nobody would know any different.
Well, I would know the difference, and that's the big thing. And the way I hunt today, I would be hunting exactly the same way if I had nothing to do with the hunting industry. If I didn't have social media, didn't have a podcast, I would never wrote a magazine article, it was just me keeping everything to myself and not even telling a soul, I would still be hunting the same way I do today. It's not about how many bucks I can hang on the wall. It's about the challenge of matching wits with one individual buck, and that individual buck has to be special. He has to have age, and he has to have a nice rack to go with that age. And I'll be the first to tell you, I would shoot a 5-year-old with giant antlers before I would shoot a 10-year-old with average antlers. I think that age bit garbage is just an excuse for some people that can't kill a giant, so they overestimate their deer anyway. I don't think you can tell the age of a wild buck just by looking at him. You can tell a mature one, yeah, but what's mature? Is he 4 or is he 8? And he could be anywhere in between there. So I think a lot of guys fool themselves into say, I'm hunting age, when there's no way they can age them deer. I can't age them. I don't believe anybody can. You can tell mature, but that's about it.
Yeah. So, comment if it's emotions, right? It's navigating the goods and the bads, the highs and the lows. But yeah, we're both in a very different spot. Whether it takes us 3 years to achieve that goal or it takes us 5 years, I think both of us we have different goals. We're at different. It's no secret we're at different parts of our journey, and I'm after different things than he's after. But it's interesting how things just completely unfolded, unlike anything we would have ever expected earlier this year.
Yeah, and I want to stress that I'm not looking down on anyone, because I remember the day where I was out there. I just wanted to shoot an 8-point buck. It didn't matter if he was this big. I just wanted an 8-pointer, and then I took steps, and there was a long period of time where I was hunting 140-inch bucks. First buck that comes along that's 140 inches, that's my target buck, and I wasn't hunting a specific deer. And then it became 150-inch deer, and it was exactly 20 years ago when I shot my first 200 was the very first buck that I ever targeted that one individual animal, and he's right here behind us. So for the last 20 years, I've been focusing on one individual buck at a time. And I see guys saying, well, he's my number 2 target buck, or he's my number 3. I don't have a number 2 or number 3. It's like I've got number 1.
Well, for those of you who are sitting back maybe thinking something and getting ready to post a nasty comment, you're also accepting what my goals are.
Oh, absolutely.
And even though they're different. So let me explain that for a minute. There's other bucks that need to be shot here. And he could be putting pressure on me. Yeah, shoot that. You want to hunt here? Shoot that cull buck. Shoot that and it hasn't been. It's whatever we can do to try to get us in the right spot to be on a specific deer that I want to kill. So you've been supportive of me, even though my goal is completely different than yours. So it's not that a negative or looking down. It's about dealing with the emotions, the goals, and the discipline to stay with those goals. So tell us what you guys are dealing with. There's several of our friends that have shot absolute studs this year that are probably on cloud nine. There's other friends of ours and even people filming for Chasing Giants TV that just still can't get in front of a target buck, and there's other ones that have lost the opportunity to chase the buck that they wanted to. So a lot of people in a lot of different situations.
Well, there's a lot of ups and downs when you're chasing trophy deer, and the bigger the deer you chase, it seems like the more downs than ups. But I embrace it myself. I mean, it's the challenge, and if I bet you that I've went more seasons without tagging any buck than anybody listening to this. This is my 48th deer season, and I promise you, a lot of those seasons I did not tag a single buck, and I'm fine with that. I've shot more than my fair share, and that's part of learning. Is if you think you got to kill something every season, I think that's what holds back a lot of aspiring trophy hunters. Is they've got to fill a tag every single season, and they may start out with a certain goal, but as the season goes along, now's about the time it happens. In the rut, they compromise that goal. Maybe their goal was 140-inch buck.
See everybody else posting pictures. Why am I the only one that hasn't shot one?
Yeah. So stick with your goals. Be my advice to everyone listening. And if it takes 3 years to reach it or 10 years to reach it, it doesn't really matter. You only got to impress yourself. Nobody else really matters.
All right, well, before most weeks we will take a quick break and listen to a spot from our sponsor, Midwest Land Group, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to say one other thing. Now that this election is over, I think that we're going to see a lot of things change very quickly. We saw the stock market go up. Consumer behavior is going to flip, and if you've been sitting on the fence about whether you want to buy a property, and we're waiting to see how this was going to go, and you're ready on that pivot point now that the election is over to decide if you're going to buy, especially a farm or recreational property. Now's the time to reach out to Midwest Land Group. So if you want to go out to their website, contact them. Again, they are looking for agents and brokers in a lot of different states as they're expanding. But we think back to just Brian and Clay. And the deer that they shot. It's no different than choosing the podcast you want to listen to. If you're looking for a realtor or a real estate company that specializes in properties that you could turn into a deer mecca, those are the types of people. The people running it, I don't even know how many inches of antler combined were the two. Clay's was over 200 inches, and Brian's was a top 10 typical that's ever been killed in Missouri with a bow. So give our folks at Midwest Land Group a call or follow them on their social media. I'm going to give that pitch instead of just playing a canned commercial. I got a couple updates to announce for the Midwest Sportsman's Classic. So if you guys remember in Shipshewana, we had the Legends Roundtable that went up there last year, and it was just a humongous hit to reconnect a lot of hunters and younger people to guys like the Wenzel brothers and Bobby Worthington, Al Foster, and then of course Don and Joe Miles are there. The program's going to be a lot different this year with the same folks, and the intent is to give more opportunities than just a 1 hour show one night of the show for people to get to be around them. So throughout the 3 days, there is different workshops and different sessions that you can go to learn and be a sponge from these guys. But I got some very interesting announcements that I think it's worth sharing for those of you considering or planning to go to the Midwest Sportsman's Classic in February of 2025. The first thing is the new website is up, so MidwestSportsman'sClassic.com. And instead of it being the Legends Roundtable, it's going to be the Whitetail Legends Classic. And so if you see anything talking about that, the difference is what I was mentioning earlier, where we're going to break these different groups up and have different sessions. But for you guys who are fishermen, they're going to have big names in the fishing industry, and also a guy by the name of Brian Dickinson, who's a motivational speaker. He's climbed Mount Everest. He's an author of a book called Blind Descent. You're not going to want to miss that. He's a really, really good speaker. Our friends from Team Radical are going to be there this year. So Kyle Harmon is going to be doing some seminars on going out, and he just killed a humongous elk this year. Just killed a giant buck, I believe, 2 days ago, or yesterday. I think it's 2 days ago. But they're also going to do some predator hunting, some coyote stuff. And they're going to have an area there that's kind of more, I think they're planning on doing kind of like a sit-down lounge where some Team Radical videos will be up and playing. So you'll get to meet those guys and learn from them. For the exhibitors, Chasing Giants Alley is the strip right down the middle of it where all of the kind of family of Chasing Giants is going to be. So you'll be able to come visit that. But the most important thing is a discount that the local hotel is giving for anyone coming into town that listens to this podcast. So get your pen out. If you're planning on coming to the Midwest Sportsman's Classic in February, the hotel name is Farmstead Inn, and I'm going to give you their phone number, but if you tell them the code Chasing Giants, you are actually going to get a discount on your stay there. So the phone number to make your reservation is 260-768-4595. Again, 260-768-4595. When you make your reservations, give them the coupon code Chasing Giants, and you'll get a discount on your hotel. So I thought that was pretty cool for the people coming in from out of town.
And the dates of that show are February 13th, 14th, and 15th. So,
yeah, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday on that show.
Hope to see you guys there. I think they're going to pair up those legends. So there'll be two on stage at a time. It sounds like it's myself and Al Foster will be at one seminar. The Wenzel brothers will have a seminar, and then Joe Miles and Bobby Worthington will have one. So, and 360 Blinds is going to be there unveiling a brand new special product at our podcast. I think the live podcast, I believe, is Thursday evening.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep, I believe so. So, there's going to be individual breakouts, and I still think there is one session where all of you are on stage again, I believe. I don't know. We'll get the schedules as we get closer, but the big thing is get your reservations and plan on making the trip. With that, that's the last announcement I got. Why don't we dive into some of these questions?
All right. Our first question comes from Matt from Weberville, Michigan. He says, Don, Terry, and the whole listening crowd, this statement and question is for you. Without a doubt, I am 100% certain that the values and faith you guys talked about had every subscriber, and I mean every, vote for Trump. And not only that, we recruited votes, honestly. For that, I thank you, every one of you. My question is, what can we do to keep this momentum of faith and change going, obviously including the good Lord that has gave us this traction? Thank you all. God bless. Trump 2024. P.S. Michigan bleeds red in 2024. Well, Matt, I've had some time to sit in the stand and think about this since the election night and waking up the next morning, and actually woke up in the middle of the night, and the first thing I did was grab my phone to see if they knew who won yet, and I had a message from good friend and real world dealer Todd Stoll. He was the first one to inform me that Trump won, so thanks, Todd. But I had a lot of time to think about this since, and one thing that strikes me to this day is that close to 50% of America still voted for the other side. And the values that other side represents, or the lack of values, the lack of morals, the lack of character the other side represents, is still supported by almost 50% of this nation. And I see that as a potential problem moving forward, because they're not going to have to convince very many people to go back and vote the other way, and we're right back where we was at before. And I was tempted the day after the election to post some stuff on my social media, kind of rubbing the other side's nose in their loss. And there's especially one former coworker of mine that is an absolute, has Trump derangement syndrome like nobody I ever seen. This lady posts anti-Trump things every single day, multiple times a day. That's all she posts. And she had challenged, I mean, we debated, friendly debate back and forth. I like the lady. She was a lot of fun to work with when I worked there with her, but just totally opposite views. And she had challenged the Republicans, and she has for about the last 3 years, to put Trump up again, because she can't see that the voter fraud that went on in 2020, and she just thinks we're all a bunch of cult followers and this and that. She doesn't realize that it's not that we love Trump as much as we love our country, and Trump just happens to be the person that could save our country, and that's why we think so much of him. But she challenged the Republicans to put Trump back up again if we think he got cheated. And it was all I could do to not post something and tag her in it and let her know that we took you up on it. We did run Trump again. How do you like that? But the more I think about it, if you go look at my social media and the political posts that I've made for a long time now, not just recently, but I never bashed Joe Biden about his dementia. It was pretty obvious he had a health issue, a mental health issue. Never once did I make fun of him for that. And I think that it's time to heal this country instead of be so divided. I think we need to extend our hand out to the Democrats that we know, because there's some of them that are just so radical that we're never going to convert. There's purple-haired freaks out there. We're never going to convert them people. They're just wackos, and they're always going to be. But there's a certain segment of the folks that voted Democrat that are not a whole lot different than we are, and I think the big difference is they've been gaslit. They've been lied to so much that they believe the lies. They just continue to hear the same lies repeated over and over and over again by a corrupt media that they bought into it, where some of the rest of us seen through it. And I think the path to moving forward and getting this country back on track is to not be rubbing the Democrats' nose in their loss. I seen some stuff on social media that didn't impress me too much, people actually doing that. I think it's time to, have discussions with our neighbors. Maybe now that they've got their tail tucked between their legs, they'll be just a little more receptive to hearing how the rest of America sees things. And, if we can just convert about 10% of those Democrats each election cycle to come to our side, it's not going to take us that long to really become such a force that the evil other side doesn't stand a chance. And that's my big takeaway from this whole election, is that instead of rubbing the other side's nose in it, let's extend a hand and let's work together from this point forward. And because I don't think most of us want that much different for this country. I think it comes down to what we've been led to believe, often by a corrupt media, and I think that corrupt media has been the wedge that has separated a lot of us that are very similar.
I don't think it's right for us to take this position, and I know specific people that I'm talking about, where we take the Christian card and we're being Christians and we're anti-abortion and we're voting this way because we're a Christian, we believe what we believe, and then all of a sudden not be a Christian post. I think now is even a more important time for our Christian values and demeanor, acting with grace and humility, even through a victory when we're all excited. It's an exciting time for us. But having grace and humility through good times and bad times are going to be so pivotal right now. The last thing we want to do is further divide this thing just so we could go to war again in 3.5 years. So something to think about. If you're going to be a Christian before you cast your ballot, be a Christian afterwards.
Absolutely. I'll throw out one other thought that I've had this week. It comes from two things that happened. One, I seen a video talking about the Amish vote in Pennsylvania, and that very well might have swung the election. And then it just so happened that on election day, Terry and I had lunch with some Amish friends from two different communities, two different states really, and I just casually asked, "You guys vote today?" Thinking that they did. I didn't realize that there was certain Amish communities that don't vote. But then after that, I seen the video where they were estimating in this video that 200,000 Amish people voted for the first time in Pennsylvania. 200,000. Can you imagine that? And they were all voting for Trump. And it stemmed from a situation where the government came in on some of these organic Amish farms and shut them down. Literally made them shut their businesses down. And that fired them up, and that's what got them registered to vote and got them voting. But folks, as we move forward, and I don't mean this in any negative way or judgmental way. The Amish have been very good to me personally, as well as to Chasing Giants in our various business ventures. But that is a segment of our society that could literally sway things from evil to good. And I've got a lot of respect for a lot of the Amish culture, some of the things they do. Give you a couple of examples. You go to a Walmart or any place where there's Amish folks there, you don't see Amish kids screaming and acting up and throwing a temper tantrum on the floor like you do some of these other folks. The Amish kids are well behaved, which means they've got good parents, making them behave, and good parents turn out, good adults down the line. And then the other thing is the way the Amish take care of their elderly. You don't go to a nursing home and see an Amish wing, even if you're in an Amish community. The Amish take care of their families, and it's some of those family values that this country really needs. And we also need their votes, though, so I would just encourage them to take a look at that next election.
All right, what next question you got for us?
The next one comes from Zach from Oregon, Missouri. These guys don't want to leave their last names for some reason, but Zach says, "Don and Terry, really appreciate your podcast. Wanted to ask Don about leaving standing corn. Last year, Don said he waits for the ground to freeze, then bush hogs the corn. Do you have any concerns with that corn sprouting into volunteer stalks in the spring? I had my farmer leave a little standing this year, but he is concerned I will have to spray the volunteer corn next summer. I think our deer numbers are high enough there won't be much left if it's on top of the frozen ground." Well, Zach, that's why I do it when the ground is frozen, so you're not running over those ears of corn and pushing them down into the mud or the dirt. I did it last winter, and I bet I didn't have 3 stalks of volunteer corn on about 3 acres. And if you're using NutriCrave corn, that corn is not GMO anyway. It's not Roundup ready, so if you follow that up with the Gen 2 soybeans, and there is some volunteer corn out there, the first time you spray glyphosate over it, you're going to kill that corn. But I just have not seen it as an issue, because not only are the deer eating it, but you got birds and rabbits and squirrels and coons and possums and everything else out going through your plot, scavenging for anything they can, especially when you get down towards the late winter, early spring, and food sources become scarce. They just clean it all up, or at least they do on my farm, so I don't see that as a big issue. And again, especially if you're using NutriCrave corn, because it's not Roundup ready, and Roundup will kill it the next spring.
I had the problem really bad on my place this year. Like what he mentioned, if you're going to beans and corn rotation, it's not an issue. If you're going corn on corn, that's where you can have an issue, and that's what happened with mine. But you have to look at how much corn is standing. I raised so much corn as test corn last year that the deer didn't eat it all. So when I bush hogged it before working ground the next spring, it was still even there. So but if you're going beans to corn, you can even spray clefidin on your soybeans, and that's what the farmers do when they have corn sprout. And even if it's a non-GMO like a Roundup Ready corn, you can spray clefidin. But yeah, I think what you need to do is evaluate your specific situation and how much corn is still left on the cob standing there before you do it. And I can tell you one thing, I'm going to pick mine from now on. And when I got that much corn on the stalk still, I'm going to run the corn picker through it. So
Good idea. Our next question comes from our buddies Ray and Aiden Miller from Burton, Ohio. They say, "Hi, Don and Terry. Don, you may want to take a blood pressure pill first, but we would like you guys' opinions on a topic we have had a personal issue with, and this is these thermal drones in the wrong hands. These guys are getting their hands on them by getting a pilot friend to do the pilot test online for them, and these are not for deer recovery. We have been told that of guys that I'm taking a big section of this submission out here because I don't want to give anyone listening any ideas. Ray and Aiden were describing some things that these guys are doing with drones in their area, and I'm not going to promote it in any way. I don't want to give anybody any ideas. So I took out probably 4 or 5 sentences in the middle of this submission, but I'll get back to it now. We think this is a huge threat to our future trophy hunting, as there seems to be no buck over 170 that 6 guys with a drone don't know of. In the past, an old buck could get away from humans and grow old, but not anymore. We feel a license should be needed for the deer recovery guys, and their data needs to be recorded and given to a state agency upon request, and made illegal to fly over a neighbor property without permission. These things are great in the right hands for deer recovery and herd survey with some rules and regulations, but without regulation we feel they pose the biggest threat to trophy hunting in the history of ever. How do you guys feel? Thank you and God bless." Well, you did hit a topic that I've got some pretty strong feelings about, and you know, this is a poacher's dream. A drone is a poacher's dream. I had a herd survey done with a thermal drone on my property last summer, and not only did we go to my property, we went to 2 different permission properties where I knew the bucks that were there. And I'm telling you, this drone found every single mature buck that I knew of, and they did it rather quickly. I recall one permission property we went to, and I described the buck. I said, "What we're looking for is this," and I'm not going to say it here because local hunters listening, but I described this buck to a T, and I bet within it took less than 10 minutes for this drone to find that exact buck laying in his bed. And when you can find a mature buck in his bed in midday, that gives the unscrupulous hunter all kinds of opportunities to act on it. And it's something that needs to be addressed. I agree with Ray and Aiden 100%. These deer today have so much going against them, that more than they ever have. Today, finding a mature buck in my home state of Illinois is more difficult than it's ever been in my 48 years of deer hunting. Now, back when I started, we didn't have near the deer we had today in terms of numbers. But, you know, if I think back for the last 30 years anyway, this deer herd has went slowly downhill. And you can't just blame it on one thing. You can't blame it on just the drones. You can't blame it on just crossbows. There's been a whole lot of different factors come into play, including some very poor regulations by numerous states, including my home state of Illinois. There just does not seem to be an interest in these state game agencies to manage for quality. It's all about managing for numbers. They don't care if there's not a mature buck in the whole state. They literally don't. They're managing numbers. And I would like to see one state lead by example by coming up with some sweeping regulation changes that totally changes their entire state. And I'm going to throw out a guess as to the state this is going to happen in, because I just seen something this week that I was not aware of, and I think that state is going to be Ohio. I seen something from a group in Ohio that's trying to get a limit on non-resident hunters, very similar to Iowa. And if they just have one bill, pass their legislature, with some sweeping changes. They start limiting non-residents, and they eliminate baiting during season. If they just do those two things, Ohio's number one. They're blowing Iowa away. Ohio becomes number one in the terms of top end bucks and the number of top end bucks. I would like to see my home state of Illinois do something, but I just don't see it happening here. There's not the interest. We're just a bunch of liberal, Chicago liberals running this state. I'll just leave it at that. Almost got on that high blood pressure rant that you guys were talking about, Ray and Aiden, but I think that you guys being in Ohio, you're in the right spot. If they do this, sweeping regulation changes, and they throw something in there about the drones, then you guys are golden. I just can't see any other state keeping up with you in terms of trophy buck production once that happens.
Yep.
Nothing to add there.
I'm not going to regurgitate the same thing. We actually have friends that scout with drones. I just personally think it's should be considered trespassing for anyone to fly a drone over my farm at any point in time. And it happens. It happened to me this year. We have people that from out of state that lease the neighboring property. And I know for a fact that they're flying drones not only to see where my plots are, where I supplemental feed at, but I don't know if there's this thermal or not. But again, this gets into my opinion, might not be somebody else's opinion, and I'm not going to diss somebody that does it. But I personally am very adamant that you should never, if you want to use a drone on your property, I think that's your ethical, moral decision. But you fly a drone over my property, I think that's considered trespassing.
Now you're going to get me fired up because I forgot about all that. You're taking me down another.
Go for it.
I'll tell you what, if a drone flies over my property and I can possibly get to my shotgun, I will shoot the son of a buck out of the air. And I don't care what local is listening to this. I hope you're all listening. I hope you share it. The first drone that flies over my property, if I got the opportunity, I will run to the house for the shotgun and I will blow it out of the air. I don't care if it's the FBI's. The thing is coming down. The other thing is, folks, I make my living with these deer. And when you come on my property with your drone and you're having a negative effect on my ability to make a living, I promise, if I can find out about it, I will take you to court and I will sue you. You may win, but I promise you, you're going to pay attorney's fees. Just try flying a drone over my house. Give me a call before you show up and see what happens.
Ray and Aiden are sitting at their desk at work right now.
I'm serious.
Laughing so hard. Oh, boy.
Well, I get tired of the freaking pimps. Let's just call them what they are. They're deer pimps. They won't go out and do the work themselves. They want somebody else to go do the work.
Deer pimps.
And then they will pimp off of someone else's work. It's driving down the road at night shooting a deer from the road because this guy does everything he can to have big bucks on his property. So let's just pimp off of his hard work, or let's see how close we can put a stand to his line. Deer pimps is what they are. They pimp off other people's work.
It's been a while since you went on a little rant.
Well, you got me fired up. I almost got through that topic without it, and then you fired me up.
Deer pimps. Wonder if we should should we make the thumbnail deer pimps this week?
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you what. We even got people in the hunting industry that are
Next question.
moving on.
Good job, Ray.
Next one comes from Tony Lambrecht from Jordan, Minnesota. He says, hello, Don and Terry. This question is for the both of you. I may be misremembering, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought on one of your podcasts you said you didn't really buy into the whole bully buck thing and didn't think it was too important to try to remove a bully buck from the herd. On a recent Facebook post, you posted a picture of an old tank of a buck with a fairly small rack and talked about taking these bully bucks out. What are your thoughts on bully bucks? Do you think they keep other mature bucks off of your property and push them out of the area? Do you think by removing a bully buck that other more desirable bucks will move back in and take their place. Thank you and keep up the good work. Well, Tony, my philosophy on bully bucks has really not changed. I think they do exist, but I think that too many deer hunters call bucks bully bucks that really aren't bully bucks. They're looking for a reason to shoot them. They're usually bucks that don't have a big rack. Usually typical 8-point racks that maybe score 120, 130 inches or whatever, and they get shot and they get called bully bucks. And I think a very small percentage of those bucks are bully bucks. And I say that because I've seen a lot of social media pictures of guys with bucks, and they say, I shot this buck because he was a bully buck. I needed to get him off my farm. He was running off every other buck that came into the food plot or whatever. And they've got a 3-year-old buck. And they got a 3-year-old 120, 130 inch 8-point, and they're calling him a bully buck. In my opinion, that's not a bully buck.
Can I clarify that?
Yep.
I think what you meant in that podcast that he's referring to is a hunter evaluating the demeanor or attitude of a deer and saying he's a bully buck because of how he's supposedly acting, which is different than what your post was saying a bigger buck. That I don't know that you were saying I'm putting a profile of this demeanor of how this buck is, its attitude, whether he's passive or aggressive. I don't think that's where you were going, was it?
Well,
maybe it was.
Here's the thing. I mean, I just witnessed it yesterday morning. 2 bucks come together. Actually, I've seen it twice in the last 2 days. 2 bucks come together. One buck bristles up, and and he turns it, lays his ears back, and he cocks his head, and he postures. That doesn't make him a bully buck. All bucks do that. And in both cases, one buck did that, and the other buck just kind of walked away. It wasn't like he ran him clear out of the field. I think guys see a buck posture, and all of a sudden he's a bully.
But your post was more, this buck clearly outweighs everything. He's not as superb genetically. I don't want that buck getting to the older age class where he could physically kick another buck's butt of a young up-and-comer and push him off. I think that's the correlation you were trying to make in your post, right?
Yeah, and the photo that I used was a mature buck. If you would just see his antlers, you would think, oh, that's a 2 or 3-year-old. But once you've seen the body, you knew he was an older, mature buck. Yeah. And that's the big difference.
It makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense and clarifies things for people.
Yep.
It's a good question.
All right, last question. This comes from our buddy Joe Chambers out in Nebraska. He says, Don and Terry, thank you for the knowledge, wisdom, and friendship over the past few years. Don, I'll get right to the point. I've watched every episode, but can't recall you speaking about this. What, in your opinion, is the difference mentally, emotionally, and perhaps even spiritually for a hunter to change from targeting solid 3 to 4-year-old deer to one that makes the decision to only target 5.5-year-old and older bucks, perhaps even one buck? Well, the difference, to be quite honest, the difference is, if you're going to do that, you got to forget what everybody else thinks about you, because you're going to have seasons where you don't shoot a deer. If you're really focused on that and you're dedicated to it and you're not going to compromise your goals, you're going to have to forget about going to social media and seeing every other Tom, Dick, and Harry in North America with posting a picture of the buck they shot.
And criticizing you for not shooting one.
Yeah. What other people think just has got to be thrown out the window. Emotionally, you've got to be ready to accept the fact that there's going to be seasons you don't tag a deer. And some guys can't handle it. They just can't. And I said it before, I think one of the biggest hurdles to taking that final step as a trophy hunter to only targeting 5-6-year-old deer and only hunting one of those each season. So, you pick out a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old buck, and that's the only deer you're going to shoot that season. I think one of the biggest hurdles for some of these guys is that they've gotten really, really good at killing 3- and 4-year-olds. Maybe not targeting one of them, but they can go out every year and they can tag a nice 3- and 4-year-old buck. And a lot of times, for them to make that jump to the next level and target one buck that's 5 or 6 years old, they've got to totally change what they do, because what they do to kill those 3 and 4 year olds will not work consistently anyway on the next age class of bucks. So it's not for everybody, and I certainly am not looking down on anybody. I've got more time and more resources to do this today than I did even 10 years ago, and especially 20, 30 years ago, which is the points where a lot of the other deer hunters are today. It's just I just hunt to please me, and if I can, along the way, if I can be an example to others and maybe help them be successful, then that's just icing on the cake, really. So it does require a change in your mentality, no doubt about it. You can't just go out with the same mentality that you used to kill 3 and 4 year old bucks if you're going to kill one specific 5, 6 year old buck.
All right. Is that the last one for today?
That's the last one.
Well, let's shift and look at the forecast for the next few weeks. I'm signing on right now and changing my location. This for some reason, so.
Well, I've seen the forecast, and
right, go ahead.
Temperatures are going to be in the 60s for this coming week as highs. Lows in the 40s. Still just a little bit warm for this time of year. But we're in the lockdown phase. I don't mind seeing these warm temperatures this time of year. I don't want those. Those bucks are locked down. I don't want them running helter-skelter and getting killed, a mile away or whatever from the properties where I have permission or my home farm. I'd just as soon it be hot. I'd just as soon those deer not be moving. I'd just as soon the rut be over and get those bucks through it. And we've got some pretty difficult hunting conditions, not only from the weather's angle for the next week, but it's a lockdown phase. And I said it earlier, I consider that the toughest part of the whole season. So it may be the rut, you may be on rut vacation, but I'm telling you, this is going to be a tough week. Yep. You'll see a lot of deer, don't get me wrong, you're going to see a lot of deer because of the time of the year it is, but if you want to kill a giant, it's not going to be easy.
Yep. So I think as at least through the midweek, what I just saw there is the temperatures rising and the pressure's dropping. So we'll see what it is next weekend as we get into that week before gun season, because what we could happen is the temperature fall out and there end up being a whole lot of deer shot during gun season this year. That could happen.
It could. The one thing we got going for us in Illinois is our gun season is going to be a little bit later than normal this year.
Yep.
So I'm hoping the rut's pretty much wound down by then, and my guess for you guys that hunt Illinois is that once that gun season is over, what you was seeing as a bow hunter right up to gun season is going to be day and night difference from what you see after that season. I think them sightings are the deer activity during the day is just going to.
It's going to almost go to late season tactics.
Absolutely.
At that point after gun season this year.
And I like Thanksgiving weekend. If you're hunting a property that has not seen a lot of pressure, Thanksgiving weekend can be great. But overall, it's not going to be as good as it has been in years past because of the later date.
So wow, it's a tale of two podcasts for sure, because last week we were talking about how good this month could be based on the 10-day forecast and with the average temperatures that was for the rest of the month. But wow, did it change? Hotter than it is, and not been a real productive rut for a lot of people. But congratulations to those of you who have closed the deal. There's been a lot of good bucks killed.
Yep, there sure has.
All right, well, make sure you reach out to Midwest Sportsman's Classic, that hotel, use that coupon code, and we'll be back next week. Make sure you're watching the Rut Report. We're going to continue to post that every single night until I believe Thanksgiving is what we're doing. So we got a lot of guys in the field reporting as these weather aspects change or different things pop up. So that's a nightly video on Instagram and Facebook of the Chasing Giants TV. And I forgot, we got a prize to give away. I almost forgot.
Yeah.
You got a coin in your pocket? This is an impromptu giveaway, folks. You got a coin in your pocket?
I believe so.
So we got to pick a winner of a Facebook follower or an Instagram follower. So what we're going to do is heads is going to be Facebook. Tails is going to be Instagram. What do you got?
Heads.
All right. So what did I say that was going to be? Facebook?
Yep.
All right. So pick a letter, and what we're going to do is I'm going to do something with a letter in the alphabet that you pick. Any letter in the alphabet. This is as random as I can make it, spur of the moment.
How about D for Dawn and Drones?
Dawn and Drones. So I'm going to go to our followers, and I'm going to pick the first follower with the last name that starts with D that's in our that follows on Chasing Giants TV, and they're going to get an ASIO hand muff, some Nimmax batteries, and some swag. So I'll contact you via social media and get that shipped out to you. Almost forgot. I'm glad I remembered that.
Do we have a winner?
Oh, I got to do that now? Okay.
You don't have to, but
Well, let's see if I can get in there.
and folks, to be eligible for this, all you got to do is follow us on Instagram or Facebook, Chasing Giants TV. Again, that's where the Rut Report is posted every evening.
It looks like our winner is Travis Dykstra. Travis Dykstra, you are our winner. He not only likes Chasing Giants TV, he likes your page and Iowa Whitetail, so he must be a serious deer hunter if those are the three that he follows.
I hope he's not a drone user.
All right, Travis, I'll get with you and send you a message. Congratulations for winning.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. God bless.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by ASIO Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Good evening, guys. It is too nice of a weather today to be cooped up indoors, so we're gonna do this outside. So bear with me if we have a little bit of wind coming through here, a little bit of road traffic going by. We'll try to make this short and sweet. Tonight, I want to go to Romans chapter 12. It's the 4th or 5th of November. I need to look at my phone and tell you. But it's the Monday before the election. So, before we know, we're gonna blink, it's gonna be Thanksgiving, and then we're gonna take a nap because we ate way too much turkey, and it's gonna be Christmas. And during this time of year, there's a lot of fundraising going on. There's a lot of charity work. And the reason we're going to Romans 12 is I want to talk about being a part of something bigger than yourself. Yet, with Christmas, there's all these toys drives for the kids. There's Meals on Wheels. There's groups like that trying to prepare dinners and whatnot for the elderly in the communities and whatnot like that. And when I think about charity work and being a part of something bigger than yourself, Romans 12 comes to mind. So in Romans 12, it's talking about the church, the body of Christ. And we'll read verses 3 through verse 8. Verse 3, "For by the grace given to me, I tell every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance to the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with the faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully." So what's being said in that passage of scripture is, again, it's talking about the body of Christ, or the church. And each of us have a gift that's been given to us through grace. And if you can teach, if you have a gift of teaching or public speaking or something like that, then you need to use that to glorify God in the membership, in the body. What happens if we have no one who's willing to do any type of public speaking or teaching in a congregation. I mean, that congregation's not going to last. And everyone has a different gift. Not everyone's gift will be the same. Yet some people, I cannot carry a tune in a bucket, but there's some people out there who have a wonderful voice and can read sheet music and everything else. And if you have that ability, well, then maybe you need to look into leading a song service. Or if you're a caring, nurturing type person, maybe you can volunteer to help in the nursery or with youth classes or something along those lines. Because the body of Christ, the way I like to look at it, and how each member is important in their own way, is like we have a nail and a hammer and we're trying to drive it into a piece of wood. You have to have a hammer to do that. And to make that motion, you need a wrist to control, an elbow, a shoulder, eyes to see. You need a mind to tell you what you're doing and where to hit. But what happens if you take the elbow out of the equation? Well, you can still probably swing a hammer, but it's not going to be very efficient. What happens if you take the shoulder out of the question, or out of the mix of all this? It's going to be really hard to swing that hammer. What if you don't have a hand? Well, you can't hold on to the hammer. If you don't have eyes, well, then you may be able to swing a hammer, but you're probably going to hit the wrong nail, if you know what I mean. Each single person has their own purpose. And when we all come together and all work together, great things can be done. Now, back to what I was saying, we're coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Something I want you guys to think about this year is the gifts that we've been given aren't to be used on Sundays only. They're for all 7 days of the week. They're for every day. If we have a gift, we need to be using it as much as we can to glorify God, to spread His word, and anything out in our communities or whatever it may be. So for instance, say you have a knack for, you love to bake or something like that. Well, as all these people are trying to find people to help out, take meals to the elderly around Thanksgiving, maybe it's time that you can step up and say, hey, if you can help me out with the ingredients, I'd be happy to bake 50 pies or 20 pies or whatever it may be. Or Toys for Tots, maybe you've had a very good year this year and you've been blessed financially. Maybe it's a time that you can go help out and get some toys for those less fortunate. Or you could go as far as, maybe you love to listen. I mean, you're a talker, whatnot. Maybe you can go door to door and check on people, and when they're delivering the meals or the toys, you can sit there and listen to people and talk. And those are all great opportunities to share the Word of God. One example I'll give is the charity Lester's Feet. And this is just a prime example of people coming together for a greater good. When it started off, they were trying to raise money for 2 wonderful little girls. And in the beginning, Terry was selling small pieces of wood that he was taking a router, a machine that he has, and cutting little slots in it to put SD cards. Because everyone knows that as hunters, we have a whole lot of SD cards laying around, and he found a way to organize them. And he was cutting those, he was having to buy the wood and cut them all out and sell them to raise money for Lester's Feet. Well, I believe it was a podcast listener, or as someone along those lines reached out to him and said, listen, I've got extra wood laying around, oak, maple, hickory, whatever it may be. Come get it. Please use this for this purpose. That person may not have had a machine to cut all the stuff out himself, or he may not have had logistically a way to raise money and give it to a charity. But what he did have was wood that was being needed by a charity to help out. Now let's fast forward. There's been raffles given, and all the prize packages that they have had in these raffles. I mean, they raffled off a brand new Chevy pickup truck in one raffle, John Deere tractors, a pole building, bows, camo, bowstrings, you name it, they've raffled it off. All because people saw what they were doing and were willing to help. And yes, a lot of this is on the financial side, but there's other things that we can be doing, guys, too, physically to help out as well. Now, the latest thing that Lester's Feet did, and when I heard this, I got cold chills, and we'll call them joyful tears. Through everyone helping out, everyone coming together to help out a greater good, a common good, to glorify God. All the money that's been raised with Lester's Feet, now not all the money, but they were able to donate, I believe it was $25,000 to the Mountain City Church of Christ, and it's in East Tennessee, I believe. They were kind of in the heart of all this historic flooding that we've seen here recently. And the Mountain City Church of Christ, that congregation in particular, was feeding between, I've heard numbers from 300 up to 1,000 people a day. you think of the amount of money that was donated, and you're like, that's a lot of food that can be bought. I looked at it a different way. It's how many souls could be reached with that number. You've lost your house, you've lost everything, and the only place you can get a warm meal is at the Mountain City congregation. And those members, I know they're spreading the word down there. And they say, yo, come inside. Yo, we have services tonight. Come inside. And they come inside, and they hear the gospel, and they obey it. And they're adding every day. They could be adding to the church. That congregation, I believe it had about 40 or 50 members before all this, and I don't know what their membership is now. But say they were feeding 1,000 people a day. I don't think it's a far cry to think that they got 50 people to obey the gospel. They doubled their size, or potentially doubled their size. And I go back to thinking about the family or the gentleman that donated the wood. It's crazy that how when we all come together for a common good, great things can be accomplished. So this holiday season, guys, when you're out and about and you see something on Facebook or an organization or whatnot, I just want you to take a deep look at yourself and see if there's anything you could do to help out. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. There's no judgment being passed, anything like that. But if there's a way or you have means to help, I encourage you to do, because those gifts that God has given us aren't meant for just Sunday mornings. They're meant for 7 days a week. Well, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Let's close this out with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for all the many blessings that you've given us. Tonight, Lord, I pray for all the listeners, and I pray that you help them search themselves and find the gift that you have given them. And they can use that gift for the betterment for their community, and most importantly, to give all the glory to you. Dear Lord, we ask you to forgive us of our sins and guide us every day. Dear Heavenly Father, we give you all the praise, all the honor, and all the glory. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Thanks, guys, and have a wonderful week.